Hello and welcome to another video from my random hobbies, and today we're talking axe throwing. So let's get started. Okay, so traditionally the type of axe that you might expect to see is the tomahawk when you're throwing axes, and more we're seeing companies sprouting up around the UK that are offering this as an experience. You might even see them in restaurants and bars as well. Not so sure about the bar element and mixing alcohol with throwing axes, but you do see them. There are clubs that you can join, and that's probably the best and safest way to get into this sport, is to look online, find your nearest axe throwing club, go along for some professional and proper advice. I myself am a member of the UK Knife, Axe and Tomahawk Throwing Association, and that's where I started a few years ago. So as I say, the tomahawk is probably the sort of more traditional one, but when you're starting out you probably want to be throwing something like this. This is called a mini hawk, or you may see them being called a flying angel. Now I'm just going to put the tomahawk down and we'll talk through this. It's basically got three points of contact, which is great for initially throwing, and you want to grip this almost like a hammer when you're throwing. So holding it like that, and I have a slight preference of putting my thumb along the side there. So before we actually throw, we want some safety advice, some safety warnings. There are a number of ways you can get injured when throwing axes, and particularly these. I would say there are three. Okay, the first one is that you may accidentally drop it down onto the floor. The obvious injury there is that this could stick into your shoe or your foot, so we never throw with open-toed shoes or footwear. Okay, we always have something covering our toes just to hopefully absorb the impact a little bit. The second one is these handles, whilst they are metal, if they clash together in the target, you can get a sort of burr or almost like a splinter in a piece of wood, and if you're holding that and then release, it can cut across your palm and leave a sort of rather nasty, almost like a deep paper cut across your palm, and it's just an annoying place to get hurt, really, because it takes a while to heal. So you want to be careful of that and file off any rough edges, any sharp bits on the handle. And the final one is, if it's stuck in the target, we always collect out of the target first and then off the floor. And that's a good practice to get into, regardless of whether the ones on the floor are miles away from the target. We want to collect out of the target first, then off the floor, because what we don't want to do is bend down, pick up an axe, and then stand up into the axe itself, maybe sticking out the target, or for the axe to be a little bit loose in the target, we've bent down and it falls onto our head. Okay, so they're probably the most likely injuries. The only other one, from the safety point of view, is that you would never stand directly behind the person throwing, because if they release the axe on their backward swing, that's going to potentially fall backwards and hit whoever's standing behind. So we don't stand directly behind the person. Okay, now we're going to move on to throwing technique. Okay, so throwing, as I said before, we want to hold it like a hammer in our hand, and again I put my thumb slightly along the side. That's personal preference. How you want to hold it is up to you. However, you don't want to be holding it in fingertips like a dart almost. It's a good solid grip. Then you want to be, when you're swinging up to the side, nice sort of straight arm, and flinging forward. There's no loose wrist. And your arm isn't tucked in. You tuck your arm in, you risk giving yourself an ear shave, which is not a good look at all. You also don't want to be twisting your body, so you don't want to be doing that. Again, obvious reasons. And it also keeps the axe nice and straight by not twisting your body. In terms of the feet, we want to be creating a nice wide stance. So our opposite toe to the hand that we've got it in will be on an imaginary line. So let's use the edge of this grate here as the imaginary line. And our rear foot is creating that good solid base. And then we're up to the side and we're sort of flinging forward. Okay, and again, depending on where our target is, depends on where we release. Okay, so these hawks are generally thrown from the sort of 3 meter distance, but there are a number of things that you will probably do as an individual. So 3 meters is the general rule, but you may wish to adjust your throw. You're aiming for the axe to stick in the target like that, with the handle coming out perfectly straight, parallel to the ground. If the axe handle looks like it's pointing upwards, that means that as it's come round from the throw, it has rotated a full rotation in the air and then a little bit more. Okay, so that means you've given it more time in the air, you're too far back. So you may want to move a little bit forward. So again, we go to our line, and moving a little bit forward is literally a couple of inches at a time. So I'm just placing my toe a little bit over the line, and that should bring it from there back to there. Similarly, if the handle is pointing downward, that means it's not had time to fully rotate around. So I'm probably a little bit too far forward, and I would adjust my footing again. So I'm on the line, a couple of inches back, and then I'll throw again to adjust. And you keep adjusting until you get find that position that's right for you. Okay, and that essentially is axe throwing in a nutshell. If you wanted to throw the slightly bigger axes, the Tomahawks, we're generally throwing those from around about the 4 meter mark. Excuse me. And again, we only throw one of these, one per target, generally speaking, because of the wooden handles. You smack an axe into a wooden handle, and you're going to split the handle, and before you know it, you're spending more money on repairs for your axes. So it's a great sport to get into. I urge you to go and find an axe throwing club, to do it properly, to go through the motions properly, to get the right advice and guidance on this sport. But I hope you enjoy it. Best of luck, and thanks for watching.